Good morning on this Sunday, April 23rd, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. The Fulton County Jail in crisis as more fallout continues after the death of an inmate found covered in bed bugs. Also, a new poll shows former President Donald Trump is the top pick for Georgia's Republican voters. And could we see the return of NHL to Georgia? Melita, Phil, Theron, and Janelle are all here. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
The fallout stemming from the death of an inmate found covered in bed bugs has led to the resignation of the top brass at the Fulton County Jail. Sheriff Pat Labatt told Fox 5 the Fulton County Jail has been in a state of crisis for more than a decade.
I was elected to do a job, and we have to hold people accountable.
The death of LaShawn Thompson has led to big changes at the Fulton County Jail. Sheriff Pat Labatt asked for and received the resignation of the chief jailer and 2 assistant chief jailers after looking at the preliminary evidence from an internal investigation into Thompson's death. Last September, Thompson was found dead in a filthy cell covered in bed bugs, 3 months after being placed in the jail's psychiatric ward. The sheriff is considering changing the jail's medical vendor while beefing up the mental health unit. He's also spent $500,000 attacking the facility's bug infestation problem. But that's not enough for Thompson's family, who won a criminal investigation. Labatt has installed a new jail leadership team, but he also has a manpower problem, almost 300 people short.
As sheriff, I have 3 constitutional responsibilities: take care of the courts, take care of the jails, and be the chief law enforcement executive in the county, full stop.
Fulton County Commissioners voted this week to approve $5 million in emergency funding for the jail, enough perhaps to make a small dent in some of these problems. Melita.
Well, this is a jail which was designed to hold 1,200 inmates, and yet it's been housing as many as 3,000. So that's a huge problem. And this $5.4 million is yet another Band-Aid on a much bigger problem. And the risk of other deaths and the lawsuits which will emanate from those deaths is very expensive. And the county has to do something about jail. And it's not just the operation of the jail. It's how many people are in the jail and for what reasons. How many of them are there for misdemeanors only because they can't afford bail. So there needs to be a complete look, and we'll also be talking about courtroom security at some point, and that's another part of the sheriff's responsibility.
Phil, I was glad to see that Sheriff Labatt really spoke to all members of the media this week, did a lot of one-on-one interviews, said, you know, the buck stops with me, basically. I take full accountability. But these problems have been happening way before Sheriff Labatt got there. I've covered them when I was at WSB for years. I mean, where does the blame fall here? I mean, is it on the Fulton County Commission for underfunding these problems for so long?
Well, to your first point, yes. I think Sheriff Labatt is doing the best he can. He's been transparent. He has pushed for the resignations of those top 3 jailers, as we know. That was good. He's bringing in people you have to do cleaning all the time, and he found out that they weren't doing the proper cleaning, and he's been moving for reforms. I will say that the blame does fall with the Fulton County Commission. Yes, you've covered it. I've covered it for more than 10 years. It's going on about 20 years. And so this should be the top priority of the Fulton County Commission, and they're already having consultants talking about building a new jail. And you know, Melita, we have to house these people somewhere, even if they're misdemeanor cases. Some of these misdemeanor cases all too often are people with rap sheets a mile long and are incarcerated for that way. And the sheriff also is contracting with other jails. He's going out, I saw, to Oconee County and other areas where we can house these prisoners. So hopefully that'll help a little bit, but it's up to the Fulton County Commission to let's fund this jail and get it built.
Theron.
Well, to echo something Phil just said, is that the sheriff is working with Forsyth County, Oconee County, and also when he first took office, he was able to strike a deal with Cobb County to move some of the inmates. But Lori, you know, the thing that we got to just keep remembering is that this family of LaShawn Thompson, and just seeing them out there, and by the way, the sheriff joined them in the press conference. I think that was something that from what my sources tell me, he was invited and therefore he showed up. And even Ben Crump, who we know is a nationally known attorney, has represented a lot of high profile cases, even complimented the sheriff for actually being there. Lastly, I think the big thing here is the mental illness crisis that we're facing in the state. LaShawn Thompson clearly was mentally ill. He was being held in a mentally ill facility.
He was diagnosed with schizophrenia.
Diagnosed with schizophrenia. And so, to Melita's point, we do have to sort of really do an audit of how many people can actually go through this transition, going in and out of jail, to have a mental disability, and then allow the sheriff to be able to work with some other institutions to make sure that they get the proper medication, they get the proper care while they're inmate into jail.
And Janelle, I think I heard Sheriff Labat in an interview say, you know, we've closed the mental health hospitals, most of them around the state, right? Because that was the direction that we wanted to head in. But now we have folks who need this mental health, behavioral health help being housed in the jails and not getting it. I mean, obviously it's a huge issue, and it's kind of everything is coming to fruition all in Fulton County. It's almost the perfect storm there.
Yeah, I love that it's something that we all agree on, no matter which side of the aisle you're on. We all say that this is a huge problem. I think that we do need to bring back mental health facilities because these people need therapy, and that's not to say that they're not getting it in prisons. You know, as I stated before, I do sit on the Board of Corrections for the state, and I think it's around about 70% of our inmates have mental health issues. So if you take that and you think about the individuals that are taking their time to have to deal with some of the issues that come with this and not knowing how to treat these, how to look for certain signs. I mean, we've got to definitely hone in there. And to your point, I was able to speak with Sheriff Labat at the Union City State of the City address, and as well as I saw Chairman Pitts. And while I appreciate the kind words from Chairman Pitts, I would have to say that I stay on the side of Sheriff Labat. You know, like, they don't need $5 million for a few upgrades. They need to fix the complete infrastructure. They need a new jail. I mean, from what I'm hearing, people are using like pieces of the building and the infrastructure to make shanks and all kinds of stuff. They have got to do an overhaul, and they need to just put the money up, make it happen, so we don't have to keep talking about this.
All right, good points, everyone. Also in Fulton County, the massive gang trial involving rapper Young Thug has turned into quite a circus. One of the defense attorneys was arrested this week. Others have said they're not getting paid nearly enough to defend some of these folks. All this happening, and not one juror has been seated yet. Phil?
It's unbelievable. It is circus. That's the right description. And they've been going through 1,200 jurors for the last 3 months. You know what should have happened, and I like Judge Earl Glanville, who's presiding over the trial, but what should have happened is they should have broken this up into groups of these people and then done it that way. I don't know if they could still do that. They might have to have a mistrial. I hope not, but in order to do this.
That might have to happen, Darren, the way it's going.
You know, the thing about this case is that anytime you have a high-profile case like this with celebrities, right? These are people who are in the entertainment industry, some of them, the others maybe not as much. And you're trying to really sort of deal with the sort of professionalism that comes with giving these people a fair trial, right? They got to go and have the evidence presented against them, but then just the chaos, and it's really becoming a distraction because, as you all pointed out, I mean, we've been waiting for this trial to happen for a while. So I believe that the judge, the DA's office, the defense attorneys, the public defender's office, they also want to move forward in this and have the proper jurors so we can actually hear all the evidence that are being presented against these gentlemen. All
right, we'll move on. Up next, a new poll shows former President Donald Trump way ahead among Georgia Republican voters, but Governor Kemp has something to say about his party's choices.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
According to a new poll of likely Republican Georgia voters, former President Donald Trump holds a commanding lead of more than 20 points at 51%, followed by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis at 30%. Of course, he's expected to enter the race. Janelle, it's early, but what do you say about these numbers?
I'm not surprised that President Trump's coming in at 51% with Georgia Republicans, but I do want to look at this from a holistic perspective. So in Georgia, I know as of 2020, Republicans only made up about 29% of the voter registrations. When it comes to Democrats, I think they're around 31%, independents at 18%. We have to make sure we keep in mind that this is not a solid red state. We are a swing state, whether we like it or not. I don't like the term purple because I think it's still, people still lean into conservative values. However, the candidate does matter. And I am not against President Trump being our nominee because of the fact that I do think that he has some things to stand on, like the Hunter Biden stuff that's coming out. He has actual, testimony, I guess you can call it testimony, but at a debate where he called Biden out, and Biden called it Russian hoax. And so there's things that Trump can stand on that can really highlight why he's a better candidate. But I need Republicans to pay attention that this is not a solid red state. And when like we saw in 2021, independents jumped into the primary and voted against the Trump candidates. So we don't want to see something like that happen again, and then we're in a situation where we can't, come out of it. So it's interesting, but it's just amongst the 29%.
Theron, I would assume as a Democrat, you're happy to see these numbers with Trump so high.
Yeah, yes and no, Lori. Yes, because it puts the Republicans in a position to do exactly what Janelle just did, and that is try to really make conceivable sense that you have this former president who is not really talking about the issues that a lot of Americans care about, jobs, affordable housing and things like that, right? Public safety. Instead, what Governor Kemp was saying is, let's stop talking about the L you took in 2020 and how it's all this confusion and all this interference with elections. So the reason I caution Democrats is that be careful of what we ask for, because we do know that Donald Trump, he is a good campaigner, right? And he is going to have the money. And we need to focus on wrapping our arms around our president, because we have our nominee who's going to run for re-election. He's going to be announcing next week. And I think that he's going to be able to articulate to the public all the good things that he's been able to do in his first 4 years in office.
Well, Phil, Governor Kemp was out clearly stating that, for the candidates, it's time to move beyond 2020.
Well, actually, former President Trump is moving beyond 2020. If you look at his recent speeches, he's talking about, and Theron, I guess, doesn't listen to his speeches, but well, that's, you ought to know what you're talking about then, because he's talking about jobs, he's talking about inflation, and of course Republicans of all stripes are going to be joined by many independents, because since Inauguration Day, Biden's numbers have steadily declined when it comes to popularity. He's hovering at a national average around 36%. I love that number. So the center-right, even in Georgia or nationally, are positioned well for whoever's the Republican nominee. But Trump is beloved in Georgia. You get outside of 20 counties, he polls fantastic. Governor Kemp is correct, though, and that's why he won re-election. You have to appeal to the center. Yes, you do have to talk about kitchen table issues, but if you look at what Biden is talking about, reckless spending, big taxes, inflation, open borders, soft on crime Democrats, the Republicans have a great message.
Melita.
Well, I think I agree with Theron that President Biden has a strong message of accomplishment. You have Kevin McCarthy in the Republican Congress talking about not honoring the country's debts, and the budget he's proposing would eliminate several of the large job-generating projects for Georgia. So Republicans need to quit talking out of both sides of their mouth and show us why they're better, because the Biden policies have jump-started the economy and created jobs and set this country on a better path.
Well, let me say this real quick. The speech that I did here, all right,
now y'all are fired up.
No, is, Phil, let's not act like the former president did not spend at least 2 press conferences after he was indicted on 34 felony counts, right?
What a joke. You actually believe that?
No. And so he spent that press conference.
He has pivoted toward the issues.
Let me finish. To say that he doesn't talk about 2020, you're wrong.
Well, he did talk about it, but he's pivoted, is my point, which you don't like.
Let me finish. You said I need to know what I'm talking about. I don't listen to the speeches. I'm giving you 2 cases where
you said you didn't listen to him.
No.
Okay, let him finish.
My point is, I think that President Trump and what Governor said is they really trying to move on from what happened in 2020. But I think if you look at this poll, a lot of these voters, Republican voters, are supporting him because they feel like he was cheated or basically the election was stolen, right? They're not talking about they like his stance on public safety, they like his stance on foreign affairs, and they can't say he's ethical because he's currently indicted. And so I just think that my thing is
someone who's indicted.
You're saying that he's pivoting. I'm just saying I think that the governor was right, and I'm actually agreeing with the governor that if you look at his last few speeches, not all of them, he has doubled down on attacking people and accusing them of having a role to politically prosecute him, and he uses the 2020 elections as a premise for that argument.
Because Janelle, I think some of the Republican voters who do support Trump say, you know what, they tried to get him on this, they tried to get him on Russia, they tried to get him on that, and now he's indicted, but we'll see if anything comes of that case, right? And they say that's the weakest case of all. So all these people keep trying to get him, and he's still standing, and that's why they're supporting him.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the silliness that keeps coming from the left, right? I think you have to understand that while everyone feels this, Trump doesn't have to talk about it. He doesn't have to talk about it. I don't think he will. I think President Trump, if he is the nominee, he is going to go after Biden, and he's going to stay focused on Biden. And while each of you and all the other Democratic pundits are saying that Biden's doing a great job, like to Phil's point, 36%. That's the voters don't feel that. They're not seeing that. They're feeling this high inflation. They're feeling all the other issues that's coming and that's hitting them directly. And I don't know how Biden's going to be able to overcome that.
Okay, let's switch to this topic because it still deals with the former president. Because back to Fulton County, where it was reported this week, the district attorney's office has offered immunity deals to some alternate GOP electors who cast phony electoral college votes for then President Donald Trump following the 2020 election. The deal comes as part of the ongoing probe about Fulton election interference of Trump and others. The DA's office filed a motion claiming one of the lawyers in the case never told electors about the offers, and she said that she should be removed from the case, but that attorney vehemently denied those allegations. Phil, just help us sort this all out because it's turning into a he said, she said.
It is. I'll tell you one thing, somebody's not telling the truth the way you just set it up. I think, in my opinion, it's Fani Willis because Kimberly DuBrow is the attorney who's representing 10 of the alternate Republican electors, and she says, I have tapes, I have been with the DA and with her prosecutors, and this immunity issue has never come up. I've talked to my clients, this immunity issue has never caught up. I know it's a tactic by the district attorney. If you watch TV and watch maybe Law and Order, which I'm a fan of, you can see that a lot of times you're trying to flip people, and you want to get your people flipping against and testifying against one another. I think that the judge needs to get them all in and look at the files and the tapes and see who's telling the truth and who isn't.
I mean, Melita, do you fear that all this back and forth could really hurt the case going forward if indeed charges are filed?
Well, I think we're getting closer to a decision about an indictment because the time period for comments about the delay tactic motion filed by the lawyers for the former president is about to expire. We're going to see, I understand today, beginning at noon on CNN, a lot more attention about this Fulton County case, incorporating the collection of software from the Coffee County Elections Board the day after the riot. So we're about to see a lot more national attention on this Fulton County case, and we just have to be patient enough to let some of it play out and figure out whether it is the Fulton County DA who knows what she's talking about, or it's a defense attorney defending herself.
Well, we'll be watching and waiting, and then we'll be discussing and debating. So, coming up, could a new NHL franchise be coming to Forsyth County? We'll discuss after the break.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
A stretch of land in southern Forsyth County could be the future home of a new billion-dollar arena. A Georgia developer proposes converting more than 100 acres of open land at Ronald Reagan Boulevard and Union Hill Road near Georgia 400 into a multi-purpose live, work, play venue. Theron, could we see the return of the National Hockey League in Forsyth County of all places?
You know what's interesting, when you go to places like Philadelphia, they have a basketball team, they have a football team, went to the Super Bowl, basketball team is looking really good, the 76ers, but it's a hockey town, right? Mm-hmm. And so it just reminded me of the good days when we had the Thrashers.
Yes.
I remember going to those games, and now, so it's kind of like hearing the news that Forsyth County, which is a booming county economically, a lot of people are living there, a lot of companies are making their business pretty much permanent there. So I think it's a good opportunity, it's good for the city. Now, what you got to really look at is the details, right? How much it's going to cost, and what is the community's response going to be to this proposal. But I like it, Lori, and let's bring back an NHL team.
Janelle, what do you think about this? Because Forsyth, I mean, it is growing, right? We know that, but I don't know if a lot of people will be hesitant to see this type of huge development in their backyards.
Well, you know, we saw this with the Battery, right? And
Yes,
then I
we
looked
did.
at some data that around 2018. It showed that in between 2015 and 2018, 6,000 jobs were generated, 1.7 billion in labor income, about 7.8 billion in tax revenue. I think that shows that the numbers are there. I would love to see this. I remember going to a hockey game and I enjoyed it. I thought it was quite entertaining, a little barbaric, but hey, that was entertaining. But and so I want to see this, and I don't like the complaint. I've heard some people say that it's too far away from Atlanta, and I'm just like, y'all, there are other people who live in this state. You know, it's not just Atlanta, and we got to allow other people to be able to entertain as well.
Well, Phil, going beyond the hockey issue, because I'm from Pittsburgh, we're a hockey town. Love my Penguins. But the other issue will be how much taxpayer money will be needed to fund this.
Well, that is the big question, and I like the Thrashers too, by the way. They didn't market them properly and they went away, but I think what's going to happen, I was just reading in Clayton County where they had this big so-called Roman project and all this money was promised and then it just collapsed. I would hope that doesn't happen, and I think Janelle makes a good point. A lot of the taxpayers in that area may not like that, and if you do look at the record of the Thrashers, you know, it couldn't work. In the South, it's tough to get hockey going.
Oh,
so,
but we have a lot more people here now. So
that's true.
A lot of trained
That's true, but it
hands.
goes back to the money. Show me the money.
All right, Melita.
Well, and show me the money in that idea. You have to look at the developer who's proposing this. This is a lot of hype for a developer who couldn't even make a 60-acre tennis facility in Roswell work. And so is this the developer who should be able to be trusted with taxpayer money for such a grand vision?
That's a really good point, because in a lot of these cases, even with Truist Park, if you don't hear from both sides, then you really tick off the folks who are against it.
That's also up to the decision makers, right? To determine if this person can fulfill their promise. So.
All right, we'll move on because all options are on the table, including possible tuition hikes, says the Board of Regents, looking to fill budget gaps after lawmakers cut $66 million from the university system. Theron, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, you know, I have to really, we talked a lot about this. This is something that happened kind of towards the end of the session. And I sympathize with the students who are probably going to have to be forced to pay more because the legislature decided, for they believe a valid reason, to cut over $60 million. And you saw former Governor Sonny Perdue and now Chancellor Perdue down there sort of making the case. And so I think that all options should be on the table, but I do think that if we want to continue to have Georgia high school students graduating, either going to technical schools, 2-year schools, or 4-year colleges, universities, HBCUs in the state, then I don't think that they should have to pay more. I think there's got to be a third way to this problem.
Phil, are we looking at tuition hikes?
I say the answer should be no, and I think it's going to be no. I'm with the parents and students, especially under Biden inflation. This is the wrong time to do it. We do need to have cuts. Any bureaucracy can be cut. And so they're going to be a study committee. I know a lot of the regents, I've talked to them, and they're going to study the whole tuition issue, and I think maybe they might punt and come back next year.
All right, we'll leave it there, folks. Coming up, winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
I just want to give a shout out to Ardenia Gold. She is the host of Motherhood is Political. I was able to be on her podcast this week. It was really insightful. Great job, and a big shout out to her. She's a wonderful and fabulous host, and I know that podcast is going places. Phil, over to you.
Well, I want to make us a winner, the AmeriGroup healthcare agency. It's getting a bad rap from some of the media. We've talked about foster care, and all of us agree that that's a dysfunctional system that badly needs reform. But I don't like the fact that in the mainstream media, AmeriGroup is getting a bad hit. It's the state's program they work with. It's called Georgia Families 360, and they are following all contractual obligations. And I think basically they're not gouging anyone. The state sets the pay rates, and you never will read that in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. My winner with a great legacy is Dr. Charles Stanley. He was, of course, the pastor emeritus for First Baptist Church in Atlanta, and a worldwide broadcast ministry, and that's what Christ said to do. Spread the word. So what a winner, what a legacy.
And an impact on so many folks that he had. All right, Melita.
My first winner is the YWCA of Greater Atlanta, which honored 10 women, and Woman of the Year, the president of Spelman College on Thursday. They have a new president and CEO. They're renovating the Phyllis Wheatley YWCA, and it's a cause close to my heart because I chaired that first salute 40 years ago. The other winner for me is Lucy Lukovich. She's a Georgia State student who has a solo premiere show provocatively called Pop My Cherry. And I'll tell you that it'll pop your wallet if you buy one of her paintings. And she is the daughter of AJC Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist Mike Lukovich.
Theron, over to you.
All right.
Please, hurry.
First, Michael Owens, the new mayor of Mableton, newly created city. I want to make him a winner. Also, Levon Allen, the new sheriff in Clayton County. And also want to make a loser, this athletic coach, Mark Taylor, who recently visited Atlanta and said things like, you need to come up here and go hunting. Ain't nothing but blacks up here. This is just basically showing us that racism is still alive in 2023. Yikes. Wow. And people should definitely check out the video. It's pretty horrifying.
Janelle.
Yeah, that is horrifying. And Michael Owens and I went to the same college, North Carolina A&T. Okay. So my winner is Mayor Vince Williams and the Union City Council and staff. Like I stated before, I went to the State of the City address, and I can be a little critical. So I'm telling you, they did a phenomenal job. It was really good. Good work to them. As well as I want to give a shout out to Vesna, who works at the 7th District office under Congressman Rich McCormick. She is one of those people that's working behind the scenes and getting things done. And lastly, just thank you to everyone who listened to the debut of my radio show.
Great. Congrats. We'll see you again next week, everyone. Bye-bye.